under the leadership of the United States of America. We discussed regional issues as well as our pursuit of peace and standing up to terror and hate of all forms in our region and elsewhere.
And joining us now with more on the latest developments in the region are Asher Friedman, Executive Director of the Misgav Institute, and Brigadier General Relik Shafil, former Air Force Base Commander. Thank you both for joining us today. So we have a lot to discuss in the region right now and with the Prime Minister's upcoming trip to the United States. But I first want to start with this phone call between Herzog and the Bahraini king. Very unusual that the king himself asked to make this public. So Asher, turning to you, what can you tell us about the significance of this phone call and its timing?
It's highly significant. Bahrain was under pressure over the last several years because it remains in the Abraham Accords. Bahrain has been under attack by Iran very forcefully. Bahrain has seen the deepening, unprecedented cooperation between Israel and the UAE. The cooperation exists between Israel and Bahrain as well, but Bahrain would certainly be interested in deepening and furthering that cooperation. We've also seen, by the way, that trade, for example, between Israel and Bahrain continues to go up despite regional tensions. So the relations have been maintained over the past years of war. And now, especially due to the Iranian threat, both sides have an interest in taking those ties to the next level.
And is this in any way sort of an indication or a message to the Iranians that, you know, we're going to move closer to Israel because of your actions?
We've heard statements, for example, by the top advisor to the president of the UAE that the Iranian attacks are only going to draw the countries of the region closer to Israel. I think that's true. I think that's true for current Abraham Accords partners like Bahrain, like the UAE, even like Morocco. And that's true for additional countries in the region that see the very concrete benefits of cooperating with Israel, see that Iran is attacking them regardless of their ties to Israel. It's attacking them because it sees them as a legitimate target in its battle with the U.S. And I think that will lead to deepening ties, both on the military level, but also on other levels, whether in innovation, economy, travel. I think we'll see a deepening of ties.
Mm-hmm. I'd also like to diverge a little and answer the question you asked my colleague. I think the reason that the king talked to the president and wanted it aired is because he wanted to tell the next administration in Israel, if it is the current opposition, that the ties are bipartisan and not tied to one party or another. And I think that would be the reason for this. I don't think it has much of an effect on Iran or on the strategies. So it's more of a personal assurance that things are going to keep whatever the administration here will be.
Asher, I mean, we just heard what Relik said, and he's concerned about this meeting. I mean, could we potentially be looking at a Zelensky-style sort of ambush at the White House for the Prime Minister? I mean, are you also pessimistic, or do you have a little bit more optimism regarding the relationship between Trump and Netanyahu?
You know, again and again, we hear analysts or media outlets reporting of a rift, and I mean, this is Axios about 50 times, a year or every month reports that Trump and Netanyahu, there's a huge rift, and they cursed at each other. And I think that in practice, when we look at the actual cooperation and we look at the actual degree of U.S. pressure on specific issues, Israel's ability to find a kind of common ground or a middle ground with the U.S., the fact that, I don't think that it may be true that it was Netanyahu's office that requested the meeting, but I don't think that Netanyahu or any other world leader, to be honest, has the ability to force President Trump to sit down with them. I think President Trump is pretty decided on his own certainly what kinds of military action he's going to take, and also what world leaders he's going to meet. But I know that as a fact from behind the scenes on other issues as well. So I think that we're not going to see a Zelensky style meeting. We may see some disagreements. That's natural. We may see some pressure on Israel. That's always been the case. But I think that the United States and Israel, specifically Netanyahu and Trump, have shown practically, beyond rhetoric and beyond media reports, the ability to work together on many issues. And the fact is that Israel, for example, does control 60%, 70% of the Gaza Strip, even though under the 20-point plan, Israel is supposed to pull back, but it's clear that that would be an unacceptable security threat to Israel. We know that Turkey is pressuring the United States to urge an Israeli withdrawal in southern Syria. That hasn't happened. Israel has primarily retained freedom of action in southern Syria. So I think overall we've seen, like I said, a not always a unified position, but a constructive relationship between the two countries and the two leaders in practice.
Mm-hmm. And Asher, when you mentioned Turkey, and of course there was the sale of the F-35s, which I guess still remains sort of a question mark. We also heard President Trump tie the Saudi nuclear deal that he made to the Abraham Accords. And just today, of course, the Syrian president said he's looking to sign some kind of a deal with Israel. So on the one hand, you have President Trump maintaining closer ties with Turkey, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, those countries. Now, Saudi Arabia does not seem to be on board with joining the Abraham Accords, to Israel's dismay. So what is your assessment of all of this?
The United States has a broad range of interests and allies. We can't ignore that. I think Saudi Arabia is unlikely to join the Abraham Accords in its current form, certainly because it's seen as a UAE-led initiative. But we could see other steps towards widening Israeli-Saudi integration or cooperation. The way that Saudi allows Israeli overflights through its territories, we could see Saudi Arabia, for example, allowing goods destined or originating from Israel to cross its territory as part of the IMEC corridor. So we could see positive steps in Israel-Saudi relations, even below the level of full normalization. Regarding the agreement, we still haven't seen the text. We still don't know to what degree Saudi Arabia is going to be requested to formally renounce enrichment. The fact that Saudi Arabia itself has vast deposits of uranium makes it even more complicated. So in terms of whether President Trump has announced that there will be no enrichment, we'll have to see the actual text of the agreement once it's submitted to Congress.
And Relic, turning to you, we mentioned Syria as well. Now, Syria poses a very real security threat to Israel. We heard the prime minister saying to his cabinet, according to reports, that President Trump wants Israel to withdraw from Syria. And we heard, of course, al-Jolani's comments that he wants to make peace with Israel. Do you see Israel and Syria moving towards diplomatic and peaceful relations? Is that something that's realistic for Israel?
Well, at the end of the day, Israel doesn't have any claim on Syrian lands. So if Syria is able to control the Golan area and make sure that there are no infiltrations or hostile forces, be they Iranian or ISIS or whatever, then Israel will not have a reason to stay in there. And that also has a bearing on the relationship between al-Jolani and Lebanon Hezbollah. If Jolani agrees to put pressure on Hezbollah in the Bekaa Valley and stop I would say, trucks from smuggling in weapons into Hezbollah's hand through the Syria-Lebanon borders, if he's able to control that, then Israel might have a reason to give up some of the lands they took after Assad's fall. So Israel needs to work out a strategic and diplomatic maneuver that will improve its position both with the Syrians and with the Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is not going to move towards Israel without some solution to the Palestinian issue. It has been the case since about 2003. And we're not going to see any news on that area in the near future without Israel making a change in the looks at Judea and Samaria.
All right, so Brigadier General Relic Shafir and Asher Friedman, we're out of time, but thank you so much for joining us today and for your analysis.